Please join me for Ask the Good Doctor, live today and every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central Standard Time, and 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bring your questions.
On my YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel. And please, if you could, subscribe to my YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. Yes. Ask the Good Doctor, LaJoyce Brookshire. Like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to Ask the Good Doctor. I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, and we are live on Wellness Wednesday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad that you are here with us. Grab your Good Doctor notebook. You are not going to want to miss one moment of the conversation today. Also, join me on Twitter at Ask the Good Doc, on Instagram and Facebook at Ask the Good Doctor. I'd love for you to jump into this conversation on my YouTube channel. Yes, we are here for you each and every Wednesday live. If you have not already, please stop what you're doing and click that little subscription button down below, and also click the like button as well. Well, today, our guests are the amazing and the fabulous and the wonderful Miss Sylvia K. Alston, and she is going to have a conversation with us along with our other guests, DeAndre Salter, and we are going to chat about how you can lose and still win. Ooh, I just love that topic. Hello, Sylvia. Hello, DeAndre.
Hey, sweetie, how are you?
I am well. Hello, DeAndre.
How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I am so glad to have you both for this conversation. And this is a money conversation. It is. And some of you may even be wondering, why me as a naturopath? Why am I even having this conversation with you? Well, I'm going to tell you. And to coin a phrase from the fabulous Bishop Kenneth Ulmer, he says that some things set up anatomical, physiological, and psychological consequences that, if not dealt with, will kill you. And not dealing with your money or the lack thereof will kill you. It sets up stress within the body that devastates the health. The adrenal systems get overloaded. Your heart starts to race and beat faster. Anxiety sets in. You are thirsty and you don't know why. And this is the fight or flight system that is at work here. And we want you to overcome that. Sylvia here is a risk manager. She's with Momentum Risk Management. And DeAndre Salter is the author of The Culture of Money. And he is also an entrepreneur dedicated to building the Black wealth movement. Just love that. First, I want you to take a look at this clip that I've got here. And it is Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she is an amazing medical doctor, but who deals in a lot of alternative therapies, who talks about quite succinctly here in this clip about why the relationship with money or lack thereof affects your health. Take a look at this.
What is the money-health connection? Research repeatedly indicates that financial health and physical well-being go hand in hand. A 2015 survey conducted by one of the largest banks in the United States revealed that 81% of respondents found other goals much easier to achieve when their finances were in order. 70% stated that good financial health had a positive impact on their physical health. According to a CDC survey, the greater one's income, the lower one's likelihood of disease and premature death. In fact, socioeconomic status is now viewed as a determinant of health rather than a mere correlate. Money is tied to our basic will to survive. We are hardwired to want to feel safe, and in our society, money is what makes us feel safe. And that's why money is one of the greatest causes of stress. And money stress, like other forms of stress, can cause health issues. Prolonged stress increases cortisol levels and can trigger unhealthy habits such as eating fatty and sugary foods and drinking too much alcohol and lacking enough sleep. It leads to health issues like weight gain, high blood pressure, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. A 2018 study by UCLA, Duke, and Drexel universities documented significant increases in blood pressure during the 2008-2010 recession, especially true among younger adults in the workforce and older homeowners whose home values were declining. Mental health issues occur too, and they're related to attitude, behavior, emotional stability. Depression is very common during a financial crisis. Health issues related to money stress often result in more financial struggles. Stress over money can make you sick. When you're sick, it can affect your finances, so there's a vicious cycle if you don't have a plan for managing both.
That's it. In a nutshell, that is it. Sylvia, I have to tell you that you actually programmed the show for me today, and you are not even aware of how or why.
Yeah,
I heard actually Bishop T.D. Jakes say that people take a tweet or a post and run with it. But I have to tell you that it was one of your posts that I came up with this show title because I thought it was absolutely positively applicable. You can still lose. You can lose and still win. What was it that was the impetus for you posting that phrase?
Well, I think we are in a particular time in our nation's history, I think even in the world, where people are experiencing a lot of setbacks and setup. And I think that so many of us do not realize that sometimes these setbacks are tremendous opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so the impetus for that, the impetus for that post was really, I am currently working with a new hire, a woman who's coming out of the large corporate environment into working for an entrepreneur, a small boutique-sized insurance brokerage. Mm-hmm. And as part of the hiring process and the interview process, we talked about goals and we talked about just building. Yes. And I told her that coming out of that world and stepping into this new entrepreneurial space was going to be a deprogramming of sorts. And sometimes that we think we project on ourselves that life is supposed to look a certain way. It's supposed to head in a certain direction. It's supposed to feel a certain thing. And then we get those things and we're still not happy, right? Mm-hmm. And we wonder why. And I talk to her ad nauseum about leading my life and living in my business with purpose. You know, yes. I've always felt as if I had greater purpose than just to help rich people manage their money, right? I do that pretty well. But for me, it was the lessons that wealthy people were teaching me about their saving, about their risk management process, about believing in the need and the necessity for insurance as a strategy or a tool to protect their assets. It was that helped me set up the framework to eventually build out my practice, because I always wanted to take that information that I had gained over the last 20 years of my career and help my community. Because one of the things that I think is so pivotal, I was listening to your setup for that clip and I thought it was brilliant. Because what the woman said is true. You know, a lot of the stress that we see, a lot of the disease and the persistence of disease that we see inside of our communities has everything to do with our low wages, our low incomes, coming from spaces of poverty, not having the information needed to access better health care or better health systems or better nutrition. You know, and all of those things lead to mental stress, they lead to emotional stress, and then they lead to physical stress, which eventually will take us out of here. So yes, that's where all of that came from. So I think, yes, it's timely. And the universe is working in such a way right now where it is bringing all of these different items into caption for us, because I think it's time that we address it in a way that we haven't addressed it in the past.
That is it. It particularly struck me. And it really resonated within my heart, which is how I couldn't let it go. And I feel that the best way not to let something go is to explore it further, here, real time, and with you. The last time that you were here, you had a conversation with us about being uninsurable if you have COVID.
Yeah.
And or if you have had COVID. And I know that that was a year ago, and I know that some industry standards have changed now. Can you please update us and talk to us as well? We talked earlier about experiencing a lot of death from a lot of people our age and younger, and unnecessary deaths. Were the people who you know who had experienced death, did they have their affairs in order? And that's what I'd like for you to address. What are the new mandates for insurance post-COVID?
Yeah.
And what have you seen industry-wide or in your business with people who are ready to die, quite honestly?
Yeah, that's a multifaceted and multi-layered question. I've seen COVID affect a lot of different people and a lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds. I can tell you that COVID, how it's affected my specific community, people that I am in relationship with or in friendship with, or people that I've worked in media and entertainment and even in the financial realm with, those people have seemingly had their affairs in order for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you though that when COVID began, I was really worried, like I think most people were, that, business would dry up or things would stop or shut down for me because the world was coming to an end. And one of the things that I, use not as just a marketing ploy, but honestly, as an attempt to help people get their affairs in order was, listen, guys, if you've never sat and addressed your end of life plan, and the pandemic is the proper time to
That's
start
right.
some of these conversations, right? So we had people who were working for organizations and worked for big corporations. They didn't know what kind of insurance they had, or if they had life insurance at all. And then we had people who were attempting to get life insurance on their own because they had been displaced or they had been furloughed or they had lost their job, only to find out that their coverage wasn't going to go with them. It wasn't portable when their tenure ended with their organizations. And so we my company stood in the gap really to help people get their individual plans in place.
Good.
And one of the things that, I talk to my clients about is that, listen, if you've been exposed to COVID, if you've had COVID within this last year, you are uninsurable. And so it makes better sense for pre-COVID, before you're exposed, to make sure that you have your affairs in order. COVID right now, because it's still so much to learn about the disease, we are still in early vaccination phase for the virus. It is being treated much like HIV, much like other chronic illnesses like extreme diabetes.
Yes.
And so in those instances, and cancer. And so in those instances, what happens a lot of times is that insurance companies set up a window of time where they won't touch you at all. With HIV, you're considered uninsurable. With cancer, only after you've had a 5-year or a 10-year window of being free from cancer will insurance companies give you a policy. With chronic diabetes, depending on what your A1C numbers look like and how well you are taking care of your day-to-day numbers, right? That's where they factor, or where they decide whether or not you're insurable for life insurance from that perspective. COVID is for many insurance companies, they are basically coming out and saying, if you've had COVID within the last 3, 6, or 12 months, we will not consider you insurable. Do business with us at all. And so what's happening is so many people are getting themselves into situations where they're jammed up. They've lost their job, they've been displaced, they've been furloughed, and they've lost benefits by losing their work. And now they're uninsurable in the individual insurance marketplace for them to get coverage. That's a scary place to be.
It is scary. Can you pause right there? Because one thing that I know, and this has also happened to me, not that I've ever done it, but I considered it. When times got rough, one of the first things that you let go is the insurance.
Yep. You know, that has always, I think I've always been mind boggled by that. You know, I think about how much money people spend on their cable bill, you know, on their cell phone bill, on going out to eat. Right. And a lot of times, if we were just willing to adjust those things, we could continue our insurance programs, we can continue our insurance plans. And I think historically, I think why that's important, especially for our community to discuss, is because other communities don't do that. They will get rid of things that I talked about. They'll get rid of the cable bill. They'll get rid of, you know, they'll stop going out to eat. We'll stop doing extracurricular activities for a while to make sure that their insurances are paid. We don't look at it the same way. Right. And I think historically what's always kind of, it doesn't confound me because I understand it. We always had a negative relationship with insurance because of how we were originally brought into the sphere of insurance. Right. You know, the first time you saw life insurance in our communities was on us as slaves. People who enslaved us took out insurance policies on us as chattel. And then after slavery, when we moved into Reconstruction and when we moved into the spaces where people were sharecropping and farming on their own land and going out and buying insurance policies, insurance salesmen at that time were offering them policies where the mortality tables for Black people were 3 times the rates of mortality tables for white counterparts.
Yes.
So these things are embedded in our psyche. They've been passed down through story, through folklore, through generation of bad experiences with insurance. And I understand that the insurance industry has had a lot of accountability to make to people. You know, not until 2006 did we even see landmark lawsuits in the insurance industry for writing insurance policies on people that were 3 times the mortality rates of their white counterparts. So the insurance industry has had a very hard time holding itself accountable for the damage done inside of our community. But we've also not ever invested well into it because we don't have an understanding of it. There's not enough people who look like me working inside of the industry who do this work to scope out this kind of thinking. And then also we just historically, generations handed down, we've just not invested.
And so when you talk about losing and still being able to win, I'm somebody who lost a lot financially and had to rebuild. And the rebuilding process, how arduous that task has been. And it was after a great loss of my first husband, but I was left with, or should I say saddled with, the responsibility of being encumbered by his debt and primarily his tax debt. I've paid more than $70,000 to the IRS. I've paid more than $50,000 to New York State. I mean, I got entangled with someone who I had no clue had never paid their debts. I'm saying something here to you all who are paying attention really closely here. I want you to know that it could have cost me every single thing, and it almost did.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why this show topic today, You Can Lose and Still Win, resonated with me so deeply because I've lost almost everything. And from someone who was making an effort to strangle me from the grave, that's what I've lost it from that. And then combine that with the deception of him knowing he had AIDS all along and never telling me, and how it just felt like this massive setup. And that I would be the scapegoat. I would be his scapegoat after his death. And then so I was left with that. And my new husband helped take that on. And I make every effort not to think about where I would be, but I'm just looking ahead to where I'm going. And I'm staying focused on that. And I'd like to stay focused and say that I'm winning. What are some strategies that you have, Sylvia, for helping people to win after such loss?
What you're saying is it's so disheartening. Because when I think of how our communities are structured, the Black community, 70% of Black households are run by single women.
Mm-hmm.
And when you factor in that they are making 70 cents on every white man's dollar, even though they are more than likely, highly probable that they are more experienced, have more knowledge, have more education and wisdom, but they are still losing 30 cents of every white man's dollar. It is very hard to come back from relationships where we get involved emotionally and financially, and we are emotionally and financially destroyed. It's very hard to bounce back from that.
Yes.
Fortunately, I've never had to experience that. I feel for so many women who have. And LaJoyce, knowing you and being your friend for all these years, I've known and watched you rebuild. But I think there's a number of things that we can do. I think number one, in addition to our work, I think we should have something that we are passionate about that also brings us an extra coin.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I also think we should be investing. I think too often our community is underinvested. We're not involved in the stock market. We're afraid of it. Many of us have 401ks, but that's our only entry point into the stock market. Too often, many of us are not buying homes or not buying rental property. And we've got to, one of the things that I've said often is that Black women are socialized in fear, almost from the outset. We are told.
Wow, say more.
We are told in church, not to be fast, to turn on the uncles and the ministers and the preachers. So we've got to hide, we've got to cover up everything. We are told when we get outside of our parents' houses not to do certain things, not to go certain places because we'll be harmed, we'll be hurt, we'll be this. We are taught not to trust our men. We are taught not to trust our fathers, our uncles. We are taught not to trust our friends, And so when you are raised and in bed with that level of fear, almost from the beginning, I think so many women never take certain chances. They never move out of a state that all of their family lives in, afraid to look for new opportunities because they're coached that, when we travel state to state, or we should be afraid of everything that we see, of everything that we experience, of everybody else, and if you socialize from the outset with that kind of fear, we miss out on a lot of opportunity.
Sure.
And so we have to, on a day-to-day basis, I think, become responsible and accountable to ourselves, where we stamp out that fear, where we understand that money and wealth is built over a long haul. It's not overnight.
Yes.
And you have to believe that over time you can achieve. I know people who are millionaires who've never made more than $50,000 or $60,000 a year, but over time they're investing, they're saving, they're having multi layers in their portfolio. That is what has earned them the ability to be wealthy. It hasn't been about the salary that they make. I also know very high salary people who spend so much money that they are in such, poor financial shape. So It doesn't really have anything to do with how much money you make. It is how you respect money. And I think in how we respect money, we also find out how we respect ourselves.
That's right. Because I'm reminded of the story of the scrub woman in a particular Southern town who saved enough money to send many children to college.
Yep.
And then when you start looking at it, and then there are people who go to work every single day who don't have enough money to send their children to college, but she sent other people's children to college. And you're right, it's how you save. It's a mindset.
It's a mindset. If you look at our culture, if you look at how our pop culture is set up and how our music is set up, we are always making it appear, that flash and that excess and that spending is the goal. We don't put our children, early on about how saving, how planning for their future is the goal. That's not what we do. We almost encourage them from everything that they see, from the images that they see on TV, from the images that they see in their music, that flashy excess is the goal. And to achieve that, you've got to spend a lot of money on your clothes. You've got to have the designer wears. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. All of those things take away from your bottom line.
Right.
And many of us are not in any position. In any position, even the artists that are purporting to you that you should be doing those things, most of them are not in the position
that
they should be doing those things, because a lot of those contracts are bogus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've got so much work to do. We've got so much work to do.
And I thank you for coming to share with us about how we can start to do something with that work and the things that we need to be mindful of. And I think one of the greatest takeaways that you've left here for me today is not about how much money you make. It's what you do with the money that you make. And that first, it's a mindset. Sylvia is also the host of Next Nation, the podcast, and it can be heard wherever you podcast. And tell us where all of those places are and when do you put up new shows, Sylvia?
Yeah, so I put out new shows weekly. Probably Sundays is the best day to download a new show. That's the day they come out. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart, and I think a couple of Spreaker. I believe is another podcast forum that I'm on. The show is doing really well. We just ended our first quarter, and I am like really getting adjusted to being in the podcast space. It's new for me, but I will tell you, I'm living this no handlebars life. I'm not attached to any major brand other than my own efforts, relationships.
Yes.
It's really a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
Well, we thank you for that, and we are so glad. And we've got people in the chat who are agreeing with what you're saying. The education system educates us on everything except our financial well-being. Yes, they are. We're going to talk more about that in the second half. And Olivia says, I feel like it's hard to learn about these things because we aren't taught in school. And I wasn't taught by my parents, who also did not know. That's so true. We've got to make a change. And we're going to talk to DeAndre Salter next after this message, because he's going to talk to us about the culture of money and the book that he's written. Sylvia, thank you so much for being here. Love you, sis.
Love you too.
We'll see you again soon. So we'll be back after this message. Don't go away. We'll be back with DeAndre Salter right after this. We have the power to heal. Amen. Our bodies have the power to do exactly what it was created to do. All we have to do is give it And that is the Wellness Warriors Weekend Getaway coming at you in June and Vermont at the Essex Culinary Resort and Spa. Literally just a couple of rooms left. And we're going to be there for you having a ball. So if you'd like to be there, send me an email at drbrookshire@outlook.com. That's drbrookshire@outlook.com. Up next, we've got our guest, DeAndre Salter. And here it is, The Culture of Money. It is a beautifully done book. Welcome, DeAndre.
I am so excited to be here, and I really love the conversation you just had with Sylvia. You guys really opened it up and set it up beautifully for some other conversations that many of us can have after today.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when we're all about presenting solid solutions here on this show, and I think that your book does just that, because you're also a bishop. I want you to speak to the point that Sylvia was making about fear being instilled in women very early.
Yeah, and I would graduate that. And by the way, I agree with pretty much everything Sylvia said, and she really nailed it. But I think that fear issue is actually an issue for more than just women. I think when you zoom the lens out, I think especially it's an issue in the African-American population. I think our people really suffer from it. In my book, I have this thing called financial Patty Hearst syndrome. And I believe that, like Patty Hearst syndrome, it's the result of a person that's taken captive by two emotions that cause bad financial decisions.
Yes.
And those emotions are shame and embarrassment. But the shame and embarrassment, when you really track it back, the shame and embarrassment is because of a fear of what we don't know, or fear or how we may be viewed, or a fear that our question or that our inquiry won't be properly embraced. And so I think Black people in general are almost socialized for fear. The media says, be afraid to live in our neighborhoods. Politicians create fear campaigns to either mute our vote or to get our vote out. So the whole Black conditioning and part of the systematic oppression that has happened in this country is to condition Black people to live in fear. That's why, hey, I hate to say it, but it's true. It's only in the last 10 years that we've even started to travel globally. Right, because we were afraid because, as Sylvia said, the stories passed down, the experiences were, don't go to that town. There were laws in Jim Crow that we knew after a certain hour not to go past a certain point. So many of us never explored past our block, past our neighborhood. So the fear issue not only affects how we deal with money, but it affects how we have an outlook on our faith, an outlook on life. And I think it's more than just certainly. Black women have been conditioned for fear, but Black people in general have been almost shackled with it.
And it's interesting that you say that, because my mother was raised in Houma, Louisiana, in the deep Bayou South, and the house is right on the bayou. And my mother would sit in her rocking chair, she used to say, and she would watch the water move very slowly. And so she made a bet that some of her brothers and sisters thought the water was moving, and some of her brothers and sisters thought it did not. So she put a candy wrapper in the water and came back an hour later and did not see the water. And she told her brothers and sisters that water is coming from somewhere up that bayou, and it's going somewhere down that bayou. And I intend to see every place that water is coming and going from. And I thought, Mommy, how did you know that there was more world than that? She said it was that simple test of throwing a candy wrapper in the water. And that's how she knew there was someplace else other than Houma, Louisiana. And I'm telling you, Doc, that she has seen every corner of this earth and has drug us along with her. So I'm grateful for that, and done so without fear. But I want to read something in your book here, just very briefly, that I think is pivotal. And it's a solid solution for an answer today. And you said, what if you were in your 20s and just beginning your income years, or are in your 30s and just starting a family? You might not want to focus on passing down wealth. Maybe your only concern is your student loan debt, your mortgage, or buying diapers and formula. I'm here to wake you up. I wanted to close the book after that, but I was just getting started. You said I want to wake you up. Wake us up. Wake us up, DeAndre.
Well, yeah, listen, I think it's more than that. I think it has to be bigger than that. And I think we have to certainly think about our purpose, what were we created for, and how we should be viewing our place in this season that we live in the world. And, of course, I'm a man of the cloth. So I certainly believe that the conditioning of our spiritual purpose must come to the forefront. And there's a proverb, Proverb 13:22, that says, good people leave an inheritance to their grandchildren, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for good people. And so I just fundamentally believe heaven, the divine will for our lives, is to live our lives bigger than today, to live our lives with a plan that thinks long, to live our lives to leave a legacy. I don't think that legacy is exclusively financial, but I certainly believe good financial legacy is part of it. But I also think we ought to be thinking about, how do we leave values? How do we leave vision? And then also, how do we leave the finances to support future values and vision? And I think that 20-year-old's going to miss the point if they just think about today. I think that 30-year-old's going to miss the point. I think if you are high income and you're living again for today, and you're trying to impress the people at work with what car you're driving, or impress the people in the neighborhood that you finally made it, right? I think you're going to make some financial decisions and other decisions related to money that are going to impact your life in a negative way. And you won't be happy, because money isn't happiness. But you know what it is, Doc? Money gives us options and opportunity.
That's what it does. I have a 20-year-old here who says, Gabriella, she says, I can relate to materialism because when I got my first job and credit cards, I went overboard and I'm still paying for it with a sad face crying. But minimalism is key. You don't need any of those extravagant things to be happy. Thank you, Gabriella. Absolutely.
Well, listen, and I can relate to that. I was bankrupt at 21, right? So, and I became a millionaire by 33.
Please pause. You said pause. No, you don't get to run right over that, sir. No, sir. You were bankrupt at 21. Tell us what happened.
Okay, so like Gabriella, I thought, like everybody else, I heard. So I bought into the story. Just go to college, get you a degree, get you a good corporate job, and your life will be different. Amen. Hallelujah. You would have made it into the promised land. Right? But as you know, I may have had the check, but I didn't have the mentality. I may have had the check, but I didn't have the information. So I didn't have the financial education. I didn't know what to do with my money. And a lot of what I did is what Gabriella did. I spent it on lifestyle. I spent it on other things. I wasn't really thinking long. I didn't invest in my 401k. And coming out of college, nobody told me that there's a thing called student loans that I had to pay back.
Yes.
Right. And so what happened was, ultimately, I wasn't keeping up on my finances. I backed myself into a corner. And at 21 years old, the first year on my corporate job in Manhattan, an HR officer brought me in and said that a sheriff was there to meet with me to serve a garnishment. And it also affected my employment, because after that day, no one looked at me the same. I lost a lot of credibility. So I got counsel. And of course, back then, bankruptcy lawyers were huge. And they said, your only way out is in bankruptcy. But you know what hurt me, but what helped me? The hurt that helped me was when I was in bankruptcy court at 21 years old, the bankruptcy judge looked at me, Essex County Bankruptcy Court in Newark, New Jersey. He said to me, you're 21 years old, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, but this paper says you're worth less than nothing.
Oof.
Now, there was a room full of people. For those who've been through bankruptcy court, you're not in there by yourself. You're in there with other bankrupt folk. You're in there with other people who get to witness your demise. So I'm 21 years old. I'm heartbroken. But, through God's grace and prayer, I got up from that moment, put some work in, and I realized, you know what? I was already blessed with the job. I was blessed with the opportunity. I don't know enough. And I'm going to end up right back here. And I didn't want to be like in the Bible, the children of Israel, they say wander for 40 years in the desert. But do you realize they came back over the same place every year?
Gosh. So
they stood in the same place, and they kept. So that's a picture of a life that repeats the same mistakes. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do that.
Yes.
And so I started a business. Eventually, came out of that, went back into corporate America, started a business, and I got from being bankrupt at 21. And my hope to that person, like Gabriella, is maybe you can repeat the process of my story. And I'm not saying everybody will be a millionaire by 33. I was, and hopefully that gives you hope that you can be too.
Amen. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Your HR officer called you in to tell you that a sheriff was there to service you. My HR people did not call me in. They actually shielded me from the sheriff people when they called me in for the garnishment, when they came to deliver the garnishment. But they were very comforting to me. So I had a completely different experience because this is a part of the residue of the first husband. And they were coming to garnish my check from Saks Fifth Avenue. Because this dude just had to have the best clothes. He bought a $1,700 suit that we thought about when he was alive. And for somebody who worked in the automotive industry, he didn't need a suit at all, let alone a $1,700 suit. And when they showed, when the HR people said, there's some people here to garnish your payment, I thought I'd fall through. I thought I'd never regain consciousness ever again. And that I would pass out. She said, do not worry, we will handle this. And they did, but I let them garnish my pay because I thought, I'm not going to give you the money. You'll take it. And that was just my thinking at the time. And because of the deception that I got embroiled in. Yes. And so when you talk about rebuilding, I'm rebuilding from there. So here I've got my dream job, record industry, director of publicity, Arista Records. And here I am with my check being garnished.
Yeah, it hurts, doesn't it?
Yes.
And, you know, that's one of the things I talk about in the book. I have a chapter that says you're a slave to money and you don't know it. And the reason I wrote that chapter is because what you just talked about, what we don't realize is actually killing us. And I don't think we really, when we talk about money, we often think about it from the point of view of logic and reason. We don't understand how emotional money is. Yeah. I have a term called money emotions to describe the deep entanglement between our money and our emotions, right? So even in the story you just told, the story I just told, look how it took us there. Look how, just go back to how you just felt when you said it. You probably felt the strength of that moment, right? And likewise, when we're spending money, endorphins are being released, chemical changes are happening in our body. So whether we're spending it, losing it, I think one of the things that we talk about, solutions that are practical, Black folk, we have to start studying our money and our emotions so that our emotions, in other words, some of us are in a bad relationship. We're dating somebody that's not good for us. Yeah. So we're managing our money like bad relationship choices. It's not a healthy relationship. And if we leave these emotions and these money entanglements unidentified, we're going to be in a relationship of bondage that is both emotional and spiritual, toxic and unhealthy, and we're going to keep repeating mistakes and getting further down into issue. And I think the healing requires a proper diagnosis. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
That if you see, like, what do you do when you go to the doctor? You say, I'm sick. You say, if I come to you and I were talking before the show, and you challenged me on my coffee cup. I said, I know what it's doing to my body. I read your stuff. I follow you. I got you. I know I should have tea and water, right? And you said, don't worry, all grace, we're going to work on you. But here's the reality. What you were saying to me is I should be able to look at my body and see how it's reacting and realize I need to change.
That's right.
So likewise, when we look at our financial habits, our financial wisdom, and our compounding financial mistakes, our low financial confidence, our excessive debt, our excessive reliance upon credit and having no cash.
Oh, yes.
Then we should be able to diagnose that and say, I need to change. I need a healing.
And I want to show you this clip of this group conversation that underscores the very thing that you're discussing now and so much more. Take a look at this second clip.
Doing things right as a culture to change the narrative of our finances of our children?
I can only answer that as an individual and then see what we and my wife also tried to do and spread, right? I can't save the world. Yeah. I can save the people that watch me. I can save the people that touch me. I can save the people that work for me. I do my best, right? So I just look at it as you have to be that beacon, right? You got to be that shining light to change everything around you. Be that leading example.
But I don't think that's anything new under the sun, what you're saying.
No, it's not new.
I have plenty of examples in my life of people who stuck their foot in the door so that I could pass through.
That's not always out the way we do things, though.
I have a dream.
You know,
I think there's a bigger majority of us that are doing that for one another than we are willing to shout from the mountaintops about, you know, who did something for me. And I think there are plenty of people who worked for that on our behalf to make a way for me.
So let me ask you guys a question. And like you asked, like if we're doing the right thing as a culture, do you guys think, like as the Black community, we always do too much kind of self-promotion and buying flashy things and doing all the stuff that negatively stereotype for us? But I mean, you got Jordans on right now. You look at the Jewish legacy, they're another historically oppressed people, but their type of lineage, like, hey, we're gonna save a lot of money and we're gonna pass it on to our generation. So do you think we are progressing in the right way?
I think what our culture is doing right is that we've always been able to take our pain and channel it into expression. Our culture is at the top of every industry. Our culture is manufactured, marketed, and sold at the top of every industry. We are at the top of music. Black culture is pop culture. We've always been able to take our pain and channel it into art, into expression, and to even, you could give Black people the worst part of anything and they'll find a way to make it amazing. I think it goes back to her point about ownership. We don't own the culture that we create. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the issue. Yeah. But what we are doing right is that we always have the most creative, most artistic, most true expression of whatever industry we're in. And the issue is that we don't own it. We're not the ones signing the checks. Mm. So that goes back into your point where because we're not the ones signing the checks, it goes to her point where we're trying to look like the one who's signing the checks even though we're not. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to have the symbols of success without actually being successful. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Jewish community has been able to do. They own things, so they don't have time to look like they own it because they actually own it. Mm-hmm. And but I do want to give us credit to answer your question, what are we doing right? We are the needle of culture. Oh, yeah. Period.
We're the founders, we're the foundation.
On Earth. Yes, we are the needle of culture, period. Which brings me to my question. Why do we need the culture of money?
Well, I appreciate that clip, and I respect and give all deference and grace to everyone who had comments there, and I certainly agree with some of the narrative that was produced. But I will say this. We need the culture of money because we set the culture for everything except money. And I think what the last brother was trying to articulate is just that point. We don't set the trends for culture and for money. And when you think about Black people and money, most of what we talk of, even amongst ourselves, are negative cultural influences. We talk about how we wear our wealth on our back, how we can't keep money in our pocket, how we spend money on flash. But I think my hope is that it's changing, that I'm part of a new conversation of people like yourselves who see the holistic view of what lack is doing in our community, what wealth gaps are doing in our community. And we want to now leverage this cultural influence we have to gather enough of us to start positively influencing the culture with our money habits, our money behaviors, and our ownership. Because again, we can't pass down what we don't own, and we can't own more until we know more.
Well, you say also in your book that a windfall of cash won't change your behaviors. Why not?
No, because ultimately we see this. Like, I don't know if you remember seeing I think it was a 30 for 30 special on ESPN where they documented the alarming rate of kids that come from inner cities and urban areas who make the NFL, and how much money they lose and how much wealth they lose within their first 5 years of playing. So they go from instant poverty, being a college scholarship player, to now going to instant wealth. And that, I think the number back then was over like 55% of them are broke. So they called it broke. That's what the documentary was called. Now, here's the problem. Why are they broke? Mm-hmm. So they had the $1 million, but it didn't solve their problem. Why? Because they didn't have the financial knowledge.
That's
and
right.
so financial knowledge increases your financial capabilities. And when your financial capabilities increase, your financial confidence increases. So what's happening in the marketplace, doctor, is that we're going in the marketplace from business contracts to shopping to investing. We don't have any financial confidence. And we don't have financial confidence because we have not increased financial capabilities, because I don't think in our community we've done enough to take actual wealth building principles, knowledge, and financial education seriously. And I think that's something that is both systematic, because they don't teach it in the schools, but I also think there's some ownership at that issue, that on it, like the first brother was saying, individually, that's
right.
something we can do tomorrow.
Okay, now say more. Okay, so is that what you did at 21 to build yourself up by 33? You can't just leave us hanging out there. You have to give us your strategy now.
Yeah, I mean, at 20,
how did you do that? How did you recover from being bankrupt to making $1 million by 33?
Well, first, it's step first. That's why the 3 principles of my book are the 3 principles of my book. They're my story. My 3 principles are, here's the plan out: know more, own more, pass down more. And that's not flashy. That's, I'm just not going for alliteration. I'm going for something that is a progressive revelation. You can't pass down what you don't own, and you can't own unless you know more. So the idea is knowledge is power. So what I did at 21 is I started treating financial literature, from financial blogs, from financial books, from financial information, even the Bible that I hold so preciously. I started to search the scriptures for financial truths, because I realized I was where I was and I didn't necessarily have to be there. So I took knowing more extremely serious. And here's what happened. As I started to have these breakthroughs, because knowledge gives you breakthroughs, I started to understand and build my confidence with money. So then I actually, what little I got in, I knew better what to do with it.
Yes.
And I started to take that and bring it into ownership. So thus, by the time I was, in my late 20s, I started an insurance brokerage firm called Professional Risk Solutions. We currently are the largest Black-owned insurance brokerage firm in the USA.
Wow.
We have offices in Maryland, Florida, New Jersey, and in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, Israel.
Wow.
And so we do global business, and I've been able to build wealth through that business. And so now that I own more, I have now put the legal paperwork in place to transmit that wealth to the next generation, but I'm also transmitting the values of my life to the next generation, so that you get values, vision, and some money to go forward and compete with your white counterparts, your Jewish counterparts, your Asian counterparts, Latino counterparts in the future.
Wow. That's incredible. Tel Aviv?
I misspoke, Tel Aviv. It's Jerusalem. Sorry, we're in Jerusalem.
Okay. Okay. Jerusalem. You have a business in Jerusalem. That is awesome. Yeah. I think that those strategies, own more, know more, that is pivotal. Are you saying that real estate is one of the conduits?
I think there are 3 things we need to own. I think we need to own properties. I think we need to own equities. And I certainly think we need to own businesses, right? Now, real estate is important, because one of the things that I'm encouraging Black people to do is, here's what we could do well, because there's enough, I don't know how to say this without coming off the wrong way, but Lord, please forgive me. I'm tired of Black oppression.
Yes.
I'm growing weary of people marketing our stories. I've started to watch less Black content, because I don't feel like being prophet for somebody else, my oppression.
Come on.
I can't say any more slavery stories and no more overcoming.
That is not entertainment to me.
I'm tired, right? So I want to have a positive conversation with the culture of money, and I want to have a positive conversation. So I think what we could shift that energy towards is, how do we get into property ownership? And one of the things I teach in my book is the ability to pool resources. Yes. Like what we saw with those sisters down in Georgia, who brought, trying to build their own town, a safe space for Black people, by bringing together 25 different investors to buy just empty land.
Wow.
So we should get into property ownership, because historically over the last 100 years, real estate appreciates 3 to 4% a year. Okay. We ought to get into business ownership, because owning a business is the fastest way to increase our wealth. Yes, it has the highest risk, and not every business is successful. But when you look at quote unquote self-made, it's usually through a business. Yes. And then I think the last thing we need to do is get involved in the stock market. I heard Sylvia mention this earlier in the show. You know, we need to be investing more. We're underrepresented in the stock market by leaps and bounds. And so if you don't want to own a business, you can still own a business by owning a stock, because a stock is a business.
There you go.
Right.
Yes.
So everybody doesn't need to go back to business school or have the entrepreneurial gene. You can have the money mindset. And if we're serious about the culture of money, our mind begins to think about how we make money, not how we spend it. And so the shift in the conversation is an ownership mentality, a legacy mentality versus ministering to ourselves right now.
Yes. Yes. You know, it's interesting you bring up the real estate and how valuable it is. Of course, we all know it to be true. My daughter and her two best friends summoned me to a business meeting, and where they told me the name of their business, which was going to be real estate, and how they connected the three middle names to come up with the name of it, and how the three of them are all majoring in something specific that can help the business. And they wanted to know what I thought about it. And I said, I think this is great. And I think this is a business dinner. So I think that I'm going to pay. But I was pleased to see them summon me to have this conversation, first-year college students, that they're thinking about the future.
Those guys want it, and next generation brings me great hope.
Don't
they grew up in the Great Recession, right?
Yeah.
And they've seen this is their second major crisis that they've grown up in. Yeah. And I think they get the message that tomorrow's not promised. So let me start thinking about it.
That's the truth. You say here in your book that excessive spending is an addiction.
It shows all the patterns of being addicted to sugar. You know,
woo!
For those of you who know what sugar do, sugar's like crack, right? You try to get off sugar, you get the shakes, you get the headaches, you get the cold sweats.
Just like coffee.
Right? Just like, yes, we already know. Amen. I received that. But watch this. There's this thing called peacocking that we do. So it's a result of slavery. Slave masters used to dress their slaves up, put them in one Sunday suit. And what slave masters used to do is peacock their slaves and show which one was better dressed as they sat in the back of the congregation. And so it became more about what we look like versus what we were. And I think we've taken that into our money habits. So a lot of times we're addicted to spending because we want to present an image, and we rather look like we have it than actually have it. And most of our bank accounts can't back up what we're presenting.
And Liara here says, we all know that person that is living paycheck to paycheck, but will be dressed from head to toe in ridiculously expensive brand names. Yes, Liara, so true.
But here's the problem I'd like to point out. And I say this all the time to higher income African-Americans. The fact of the matter is, if we at a higher income level, as a people, we're doing better, we also would have better wealth statistics. So something we're not doing at that income level as well. And so that's just not, we often say that and we think it's the poor or lower income Black families that are wearing their wealth in their back. But no, I think it's across all socioeconomic statuses. I don't think we are managing our money. Our money's managing us.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Sylvia brought up that point too by saying that the money's not being spent well. That people who have higher incomes are not necessarily doing better.
No, I mean,
as well.
Yeah, I'm saying that because look, and I don't mean to really out anybody, but we do a lot of and I understand everybody got to feed and they have to eat, but we have a lot of hustle out there trying to get their game on. They're telling people about money, but unfortunately, when I'm in the rooms with private equity investors, I don't see them there. So the question is, what are you really selling? What are you really promoting? I'm all for wellness and health and financial wellness, but we got to stop selling our people a gimmick and a game that is about getting it right now. Money's been made the same way for thousands of years, day by day, over time. And so we live as Black people in a lottery mentality. I want to destroy that lottery mentality with the culture of money. And I want us to start thinking about wealth building and rolling up the sleeve, just like a diet, roll up the sleeve, just like getting your body, and put the work in.
That's it. That's it. Well, you put the work in this book, step by step, the culture of money. Get this book. Easy read, delightful read. And bravo to you for such exposure on the insights of your life and how you managed it and what you know. Thank you so much for being here. Where's this book sold? Everywhere?
This book is sold everywhere, and you can check us out at theculturemoney.com. And I would like everybody to really do one thing. Even if you have no other time today, get the book, but also go to the website and take what I'm calling the pledge to know more, the pledge to own more, and pass down more. I think that'll reset your spirit, that your spirit and your mind agree that you're going to do something about this.
Very good. And what is the one thing, the first thing that we should do to change our financial trajectory that we can start? Where can we start?
I want you to keep it really easy. I want you to commit to reading one piece of financial literature once a week, and start with the Culture of Money. Read financial blogs. Write down questions. Don't be intimidated by what you don't know, and then go research the answers to your questions. DM me for answers. Shout us out, and we will get you answers to what you don't know.
All right. All right. I love that. I'm typing that as we speak. Thank you so much for being here. It was invaluable. Will you come back? Can you be our financial expert?
I would love to come back. I love what you do, and you're a blessing to the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We thank you, Bishop DeAndre Salter. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for this jewel that you have left us in the culture of money. Okay, that does it for me. I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire. I want to thank my team, IW supervising producer, Christopher Green, technical producer, our announcer, Indy. And we thank you so much. I want you to always remember to let your eyes shine, cut back on the wine, get good food fast, and go easy on the greasy. Until next time, I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, here to help you attain and maintain your perfect health.